Started recording. Do you mind sharing the screen, Alex? Great. Hello all. Happy Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for joining Hazardous Waste Discovery Show and Tell number 4. One more to go after this one for discovery. Anyway, next slide, please, Alex. Quick overview, hopefully get through what we've been up to the last 2 weeks in this first section, 20-25 minutes, and just some top level bits and bobs that we've been focusing on. Please do fire any questions our way at any point. We're also going to make sure there's time at the end for any questions. Use the chat as well to throw questions in as well. So whichever method is your preference, please go for it. Just to remind you that for your sakes, we won't go into heavy detail here, but happy to go into detail if you have any specific questions where you need to know more. But we're just giving you the sort of top level highlights of what we've been up to. Slide. Unchanged here. I'd like to give a little name check though, my bad, but thanks to Ellie Davis and Jack Rose, who have earned the right to be on this board as well, but my bad for not getting a picture of either of you. So Jack, I think I saw you on here. I'm going to trouble you for a good profile picture. But again, thanks to Jack and Ellie and others on here. We've been working really hard. So it's been a really good collaboration from the team. Next slide, please, Alex. Went with a new problem, got bored of Rubik's Cube, went with this one as a visual. Our problem itself, though, hasn't changed. So we can move on from this one. The goal, still no better goal. And our goal is also unchanged, which I think we've all seen. So in the last bit, before I hand over to the next one, I can just cover one area. Since we last spoke 2 weeks ago, we've actually done 2 lunch and learn sessions at NRW. First one was around benefits of understanding user needs and the importance of user needs. So it's core to all of our work. We reference it a lot in the work that we're doing from the user research, but it was great to do a session, really good. Again, really collaborative, good questions. And we've literally just done our second one this morning, which is around working in the open, which ironically is exactly what we're doing right now. So 2 great sessions, hoping to squeeze one more in before the end of discovery. But anyway, I'm going to hand over now to Alex.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my bit's just a really quick update with a few more facts about where we've got with recruiting the external users. So the targets have been kind of a little bit fluid, but this table sort of shows where we are at the moment, and we are coming towards an end of the sort of user research section of this discovery, because we'll be moving more into the analysis of the sessions that we've been running. So we haven't had very good uptake across the board, which is actually, I was in a waste tracking meeting earlier and they were sort of mentioning exactly the same thing, that the actual uptake of user recruitment is quite poor. So maybe it's an industry thing. But basically what we did is we separated our different types of users or customers into different brackets. So the permit holders, we originally sort of identified the major ones from our return system, from the consignee returns, and we sent off the actual email sent off was a lot more because we had a lot more contacts compared to companies, but this sort of sheet has been whittled down to companies rather than actual contacts. So 14 people expressed an interest, 8 of them have been completed. We've had 2 Welsh speakers in that section express an interest, which is great, but you know, like you can see, we're about 80%. We've got another one booked later on this week, and we've got another couple that we're expecting to get in, so we think we'll hit the target on that one. Waste exemption holders, I did start off with a target, but removed it because a lot of our permit holders also held exemptions, so it kind of got covered. And the smaller businesses that only held exemptions were quite hard to get hold of, and they didn't really want to engage. So we've sort of removed the target on that. The hazardous waste producers, these ones are sort of good mix of companies. What we did is just basically, in the end, we just spam emailed everyone who's been registering as a producer this year. So 183 different companies. We did get 7 expressions of interest, which is only 4% uptake. But we have actually spoken to a couple of Welsh speakers there, and got some really good insights, and we're actually above target for the producer side of what we were hoping to get. Non-waste framework directive, I've typed that in wrong. The initials. So yeah, this is a tiny sort of element that we didn't want to forget in terms of our user sections, but yeah, small element and not much uptake. So we weren't really expecting to get much from that. And waste carriers is our worst sort of area at the moment for recruitment. So we wanted originally to speak to 5 again. We sent out loads of emails, but really poor interest. And actually that interest melts away when you send a consent form and it becomes official that they want to sign a consent form to say that they consent to do it. They then tend to drop off. So we've actually only spoken to 1, and that was a phone call rather than a Teams meeting. So not quite as good there, but we're actually looking at another step is to offer a voucher to some of our carriers who've said they're interested to get them on board with this, so that we can capture what we need to from our carrier side. And then we spoke to a consultant. It wasn't really something we targeted, but I didn't want to have it as above target particularly, so I added an extra one there. So as you can see, in total, we're nearly there with a lot of our sort of research sessions, and it's been. We wanted to talk about this because it's been actually a bit of a hard slog to get hold of people, and we've learned a lot of lessons as we've gone in terms of what works, what doesn't work. Phone calls, really quick response on anyone who responds. Don't delay at all. Get back to them while the iron is still hot is the sort of key message. And that's it really from me. I'm going to hand over to Graham now, who's going to talk to you a bit more about some of our user research and analysis that he's been doing.
Thanks, Alex. Just to talk back to the recruitment challenges that have happened, first of all, I suppose there is an essential problem of when the regulator asks you to take part in research, and how some people will respond very quickly and early, like the big companies, and the tail of people who might not want to share more, sort of taking longer to get to. But we still might get there. And as Alex said, most of the stuff that we've got is in place now, and we should be okay by the end of discovery. It's just come in a different shape, but everything is sort of analyzable, so it's good. You can go to the next slide, Alex, please. We will cover in the next show and tell in more detail the Welsh participants that James and Lucinda have managed to speak to, and will be speaking to, I think, in the coming week. We just thought we'd put a quote in. Unfortunately, I can't read this one, but the next slide, I think, has a James Lewis's translation. He conducted the interview, and a man looked after sort of coastal sort of installations for the processing of waste and hazardous waste. And one of the things that matches the theme that we've had across the whole study is I've got so many other things we're dealing with. Sometimes we forget these licenses have run out and our oil bin is full. We phone the provider to collect it. He says, "What's your number?" "Oh, it's run out." "Oh, flip again." We have to reapply. It's not something we deal with 9 to 5. It's something absolute minuscule in the day-to-day role. I think this just illustrates that that's, haz waste is usually a sliver of sort of most people's jobs, and the chain often comes to the rescue in reminding people what they need. It's whoever's doing it or wherever it's going to often prompts some kind of action on the website or as part of the registration process. But as I say, we'll have a more thorough, anyway, sort of introduction to how the Welsh research went in the next show and tell. What I'm going to do now, I don't know if you can, if I can share my screen, Alex. It's happening a little bit slowly. I wonder if people can see a mural. No, sorry. Can anyone see the mural?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I wonder if it's going to let me go in closer. Yeah. Wonderful. So this is just a few bits of our analysis that we've pulled together, and some of it we shared before. The top line is some empathy mapping we did, in which people involved in the workshop look at some footage or read some notes or transcripts and try and sort of come to understand the users for the first time, and they list as a way of sort of breaking out from all this confusion of a long interview. In the case of this, number one is what people do, number two is what people say, number three is a speculation perhaps about what people think, some of the tacit things that are always involved in research, and number four is what people feel. And we know when we're doing user journey mappings, these sort of attitudes, as well as the solid facts about what people do and say, are influential in how people proceed through the process. I won't sort of go into any of that because we've talked about that before, and it's just to show how sort of the analysis starts, everybody getting into the head of the users. Later on, there'll be personas that are built with much more detailed understanding of particular user types, needs, frustrations, skills, priorities, and the rest. That was a kind of early piece of analysis. One of the things we did, and we've been doing all along, which sort of hopefully you'll gathered from what Alex was talking about in recruitment, is we've sort of adjusted our sample throughout the course of the project and adjusted the things we want to find out when we speak to the next group of users. And this is just a small illustration of a workshop we did where our sort of priorities developed as we learned some things and as we discovered things that needed looking into much more deeply. That particular focusing session led to our first real sort of piece of analysis from one of our users. We had two goes at this, or in two sections. And even just changing the order of the usual things you might want to pull out of a piece of analysis, like context, behaviors, needs, etc. We got some quite interesting different results within the group in terms of what they logged just by the order we put them in. So that was a learning. And we also sort of worked out what the best ways for people who perhaps hadn't done too much of this sort of work before could easily log what they wanted to focus on, what they were hearing, and how to sort of record it for the analysis of the project. So here you can see we've got insight, context, themes, behaviors, and needs, and we've got we're not limited to the labels we create for ourselves. So an insight might be NRW. Don't ask questions early enough. This is a permit process person in the analysis. One of the contexts might be a small number of third-party carriers are used in this particular instance, and the majority are small and they have a series of characteristics that we know some people have problems with. Particularly when they're coming into big, busy transfer stations. And so all this comes together, and in terms of voting and discussion, we come up with some themes that we think will carry on towards the end of the project. It's important often when we've been speaking to people to know that most of their business is in England, and they are very much more involved with the Environment Agency, for example, than they are with Natural Resources Wales, and they automatically compare everything, and there are expectations, and people and the agencies direct users to each other's sites, and the same process is also different, but it's not always easy to tell where. And so from this sort of level of theme, we've been trying to sort of produce for different user types the sorts of chunks that will be useful. I don't want to preempt what Thomas is going to say, but that go into the process of assembling our hypotheses. But that's pretty much it, I think, for the moment, in terms of where we are at in the analysis. As we got some sort of people in a little bit later in the process than sometimes happens, we're deep in analysis now, and there's lots of it, and we're just trying to keep up with the kind of amazing footage and interviews and sort of record notes that we've got. I think that's it. Is that it?
Graham, while we're in the UR space, a couple of questions we could cover now. First one from Louise. Interesting to know more about the voucher offer to waste carriers to try and get them to engage with the research. Can you give any more detail on that?
Yeah, we had sort of the vouchers available from the beginning of the project, and our calculation was that to many of the people in the sample, the form that we'd sort of come up with, which was a sort of £25 voucher, shopping voucher, might not have made much difference, and might not have particularly painted the level of involvement that lots of people were attracted to, particularly in the bigger sorts of companies. But as we got towards the carriers and understood more about them, and it was more difficult, we thought, well, let's try this thing that we've got available, and we'll see if it works. It's very difficult to predict what amount works best, what form of incentive works best, and as I say, we've had lots of sorts of learning about this particular sample of users. So it may be. I think it will probably just hopefully nudge us into being able to talk to the carriers. Is there any more that I'm not answering there?
Yeah, is that okay, Louise? Does that answer your initial question?
Yeah, thanks. It was just interesting. I don't think I've experienced that before. So yeah, thank you.
No problem. Graham, I don't know if you can see the other question. I'm happy to read it out. But on the question of user research, can you see it?
Yeah, sorry. A way of assessing the kind of people who are responding and how useful the info they provide is, thinking that those who are careless about regulation, but who are the ones we want to target, unlikely to get involved. So the views we get might be skewed to those who are already interested. In essence, yes. I mean, user research, you only ever get to hear from people who agree to being in user research. And so what we do is we know we can't get round that particularly, but we adjust our findings in relation to it. There are lots of biases that come into research. All of it, you might say, in one way or another, has sort of bias, and we can adjust for what we're not hearing as well. We've also spoken to some people, for example, who work with industry bodies who are reporting around a group of users, and they can tell us about the chains, the people who wouldn't speak to us, and fill in some of those gaps. So that's been very useful. And what's really interesting about a circular process is that everybody else can tell you the failings of the other parts of the circle or the cycle of waste. So it's not like we're not picking things up, but they can't be verified in quite the same way as the people we talk to directly. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Graham.
Great. So, Graham, I thought we'd just cover those ones off.
Yep.
I think you're handing over to Thomas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to just look at the analytics, but I wonder if it's useful if I quickly go over the hypothesis stuff that we've done, seeing as Graham mentioned it briefly. If I can share my screen just for a moment. Hopefully you can all see that. So alongside the analysis, we've been kind of taking the things, which is where we draw the learnings from research we've done. The hypothesis workshops are there for taking all those learnings from different sessions and then turning them into statements of what we think is happening. Initially, this was intended to be a 1-2 hour workshop. I think we've spent 5 hours at it now, so there's quite a lot of things that are coming out, and we've had some goes at grouping them. Some of these are, the first session we did was quite early on, so it was very much our assumptions without too much backing of it. But now we've done it again and with a bit more info. So what the plan is to do is to do this again a couple more times for the end of the discovery, and then we'll have some concrete things that we want to take forward into alpha, which will then map out in terms of how certain we are about those assumptions, whether we think they're definitely true or maybe not true, and then how important and high impact those assumptions are. So that's just quickly, very briefly, what we're looking at, and just here's some of the things that we're thinking. Not all of these will be true. That's the point. Some of them will be not true, and we want to test those out. So if Alex, you can go back to the presentation. Brilliant. So yeah, I'm just going to take you through some of one of the analytics journeys that I've been looking into. So this is the public register journey that I've been looking into. So this is so if you start on the website, to get to the public register, you go to this page, it's permits and permissions, very important page. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the kind of page views that we have for that. We have about 100, 200 per day, most days. That big spike you see is from, I think, 13th of May, 2020, which I think there were floods on that day. So you see a big spike in most pages on the website on that day. And then the drop there is that post Christmas 2020 lockdown. So this is from February 2020 to yesterday is the range we're looking at here. And if you go next slide, please. Here's some of the stats from that. So we're seeing about 19% of people who come onto this page coming straight onto this page without going through elsewhere on the website, which is fairly low, which indicates that people tend to navigate there rather than find it straight from Google or from a social link or something like that. And lots of people don't leave the website at this page, they actually go on to do another thing, which is good, which shows that it's kind of working in a way to get people to navigate through, which is the point of the page. It's just a list of links, really, so you'd expect those people to be clicking them. And so yeah, so you've got 90% of people going on to another page. We've also got 5.5% people coming to the page from internal search, so they're obviously searching permits or something, and then they're coming onto this page. And then the most popular next page is the check for a permit, license, or exemption, which is this page, which is where you find all the public registers for waste and other things. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is the graph. You actually get more page views in this page than the previous page, which is interesting. Got about 80 something thousand over the 2 years, whereas the other one is about 70 something thousand. You still see that drop in the lockdown. Interestingly, a much smaller drop in the first lockdown, but in the Christmas lockdown there was a much bigger drop. Most days there being 0 or 1 or 2 views. And if you go to the next page, so you see lots more people come to this page directly, or it's the first page on the website they go to, which indicates that they've either got bookmarked or they're searching for it from Google or going from some link. So they might have asked somebody, oh, where can I find the register? Oh, go to this page, which shows that they are coming here to do a thing. They're not here to, explore NRW. They're here to check a register. They're here to find out something, which tells us something about the mindset of the user in that sense. They want to do a thing, and this page is what they think will help do the thing, and hopefully it will. We see the exit is a lot higher in this one as well, so they're indicating that they're maybe not finding what they want, and lots of people. I think part of that as well, though, is actually that our analytics are not set up very well. So lots of the registers are not held in the same domain as the rest of the NRW website. They're on portals or a different URL, which to Google Analytics is they've left the page, they've gone elsewhere, which isn't ideal. So to show you, this was a very tricky. It's very tricky to analyze the data on here because it's all messed up on different URLs. So if you go to the next slide, we can see where people are coming in from. So this is how people get into the page from outside of NRW, when this is like the first page that they land on. So about half of them are coming from Google. So you can assume that they're probably Googling, waste register, water register, whatever other registers run there, and then this is coming up. Interesting that the 10th highest landing entry pages from our own in the internal SharePoint for NRW. So 109 of you have gone on, and all of you have done it more than once who have gone on from that SharePoint. So no new users there. And if you go into the next slide, you'll see where, so these are the internal NRW pages that people are going to from that page, which are on the NRW domain. So what I need to do is take these ones, some of which are the registers, and then marry those up with what's on the next slide, which is where they're leaving the page and what. See, this is the events act. So the event act. So in analytics terms, the event action they're taking is portal, which is links to the NRW portal. So I need to take these and compare them with the other numbers, and normally you should be able to do that automatically. You can set it up so that's all done, so you can analyze where people are going. But because it's not set up, it's going to be quite a manual slog to try and get all of these together. So just to show a little bit of, share my pain a little bit in trying to do this. So if anybody does, and I'm not an analytics expert, this is not my kind of normal go-to thing, but somebody's got to do it. I drew the short straw. So if anybody does have any expertise or anything, please do let me know how I can speed up what I'm doing here. But yeah, it's been interesting to see that the main things I've gotten out of it are people are coming to the website to do a thing, and from brief looking at other pages on analytics, it's quite similar. People are coming in from Google. They're sometimes coming in from Facebook or social media, but much rarer. Some from Bing and other search engines, but it tends to be they're searching for something and they want to do that thing, and then they're leaving, which is good behavior for us, because that's what we want them to do. We want them to find out how to do the thing they want to do, and then they can go off and do the thing they want to do. So there's some positives to be taken from it, I think. But yes, that is me. So I will now pass on to Sadam. Over to Sadam.
Thanks, Thomas. Okay, this is an update on our user journey work. In our user journey work, we've wanted to build a picture of an organisation that has to deal with NRW for something involving hazardous waste. So we've focused on a building company. And the building company we've created is a Scotland-based building company, 20 employees, that gains a contract to work in Wales. They've a great reputation. They've gained that reputation through providing like quality work, fair price, and completing stuff on time. We've thought about them as being really kind of focused on delivering quality work, wanting to grow their business, busy people, straight talking, no nonsense, want to keep the business moving, keep the business growing, efficient, don't want any unnecessary delays in things, and want to get stuff done. In the company, they've got a sort of wide-ranging level of IT skills. There are some people in the company that would just only use their phone to do stuff, and there are other people in the business who, would use a desktop on a day-to-day basis. We've lost the next slide.
Did we lose Alex?
Yeah, I think we've lost Alex.
We've lost our driver.
That's okay. So just to talk about the journey that he's back.
Here it comes.
So that's a picture of the kind of type of organisation that they are. And then we looked at the sort of the journey that they would go on and their interactions with NRW. So as I said, they gain a contract to work in Wales. They will be working on developing a brownfield site. Through the planning process, there's been a site survey, and that's identified kind of hazardous substances in the soil, things like, I think we said, kind of heavy metals and copper. So they're advised to remove a percentage of that topsoil. So this is the first time they've worked in Wales, so they realise that there are going to be some differences from how they've worked in Scotland, and they need to get their heads around that, and they need to learn who they need to go to and what they need to do. So through their research, they understand that they need to do 2 registrations with us. One is to register as an upper tier waste carrier, and the other is to register as a hazardous waste producer. The latter is new to them because they don't have that system in Scotland, so it's one obvious difference for them. They do this stuff, they get some support from Customer Hub, but they do these registrations, they get ready, and they start their work, and they continue to work in line with the kind of waste duty of care. So that hazardous waste can be moved, they need to classify the waste. They need to get a code for it, and that code needs to be added to paperwork. They think they've done everything right, but they've made a mistake, and the company that receives the waste reports them to NRW for misclassifying it. Now, we know this is possibly not a typical journey, but we wanted to kind of go down that road to explore what would happen for that user if something went wrong with the classification of waste. So what they find is that an NRW inspector is appointed. They need to go through a process of kind of audit and providing paperwork to demonstrate how they've been classifying the waste. And that for them results in payment of a fixed penalty notice to NRW, which they pay. They continue to do their work. They don't, because of what they do, they don't have to submit returns to us. But what they do need to do, when they discover this about a year later, is to re-register as a hazardous waste producer. And let's say they continue working in Wales for another 3 years, they need to register as a waste carrier. So this particular journey ends here, but it's given us, those 2 steps have given us an insight into who this company is, what they need to do and how they're going about kind of doing things. So we move on to the next slide. We can see that we've made some sort of, we've made some assumptions around how that experience has been for the building company. One of the assumptions we've made is that there's a lack of specific, clear and relevant guidance on kind of process for them. They're not clear on what they need to do, how they need to do it, and when they need to do it, and it kind of creates that feeling of just being unsure and unclear and perhaps needing support to move things forward. We've made another assumption, which is that they need to hire a consultant due to the okay, maybe subtle regulation differences between countries and the complexity of the guidance and finding their way around, the information that we're giving on the site. So to feel kind of reassured about what they're doing, they pay for some support there. Another assumption is that they have problems remembering and actually then managing the two renewal processes. So the has waste renewal process and the waste carrier renewal process are very different experiences for users. For the one, you're kind of having to go into an account, and for the other, it's very different. It feels different. It looks different. It's a different experience altogether. They don't get a reminder, certainly for the has waste re-registration process. So they either have to remember, diarise it, or they have to rely on somebody in that chain, I think, as Graham said earlier, to nudge them into doing that. Another assumption is they've paid their fixed penalty notice, but it may be the case that the information on how to make that payment isn't made clear to them. So again, they have to go on and find out how to do that. So in the next slide, we have some knowledge gaps. We're not entirely sure, and maybe you can help with this. We're not entirely sure how a company who is registered as a waste carrier, what happens when the main contact leaves that company? How do they amend their details in the system? So we need to explore that a bit more, because it may be that's creating some issues. We have a knowledge gap around this issue of producers and carriers failing to renew because they haven't remembered to do it on time. Does this happen? What happens if they fail to renew? What are the implications for them? So we're really interested in that question. And we're also interested in the question around what interactions take place before a fixed penalty, before NRW issues that fixed penalty notice to an organisation. What do we do, and how does that work? So that's another interesting question for us too. This kind of user journey process is really, allows us to see things from the user's perspective. It's really helped me understand that it's not entirely about what we want to say. It is about what the user needs to know and how they need to know it. And I think going through this process really helps us see that. So over to Adam now, who's going to talk about the farmer's journey.
Thanks, Sam. I'll try and fly through these slides so people have time to ask questions. So on previous show and tell, we spoke about the farmer's journey. So we've gone through this process following a farmer who wants to start a scrapyard and scrapping cars on part of their land. If you could move to the next slide. So we've developed that journey, adding in details that we've learned from subject matter experts, from internal and external research as well. There's more work to be done to make that process thorough and a journey to reflect the research. But that's what we'll be doing in the next few weeks. We've also specifically been looking at the feeling stage of this. So what's the user feeling at the different steps within this process, enabling the team to increase their empathy with this user, even though they're imagined. If you go to the next slide, please. We had some interesting discussions around the challenges faced when learning about the process. So how they figure out what their role and responsibilities are, how they understand the expectations NRW have of them. Predominantly my assumption is that a lot of this happens within the permitting application process and the TCN training courses and working with a TCN consultant, if that's a route that they go down. And we're interested to know, I guess a bit of a knowledge gap, I guess, for the team is knowing more about those processes and understanding how it impacts this learning curve for the farmer who's new to all this. And we had some interesting conversations around NRW's position on being or not being an advisor, an educator, and a provider of feedback to aid this learning process. So there's some conflicts there. People have different views on that, and it's quite interesting that we've started to pick up areas within the service that conflict is more visible. So for instance, the kind of user-facing roles like a site officer, customer hub, etc., versus content that's on the website, which is a little bit more just providing information and not reacting to user needs. Yeah, that's me.
Back to me. We can scoot through to the next slide, please, Alex. No real change, really. We're just going to keep focusing user research, recruitment, user journey mapping, more analysis. But as we are nearing the end of discovery, our focus turns to the discovery recommendations, where our heads are at. So that's going to be front and center for us over the next 2 weeks. Next slide, please, Alex. Brings us to the questions. Apologies, we clearly did do too much these last 2 weeks because we've talked a lot there. So apologies, we're over slightly. Time for a few questions, if there are any. While I wait to see if there are any questions, just anybody that was on the Lunch and Learn session today, good examples of working in the open. We've had some great responses from NRW colleagues with some of the stuff we've asked for there. So thank you for your offers of help there. We will be taking you up on those. Working in the open, happening live. Sorry, question from Matthew, what happens after discovery? That discussion's ongoing now, Matthew. So it's something that's being looked at in both CBPS and NRW side. So I don't know if there's anybody else on here that can give any more thoughts on that.
We can say what we're thinking the end of discovery will look like, as in, you know, we're planning to do more of the hypotheses and generate that set of hypotheses that we want to test in alpha, and then we can, you know, say we'll present our findings and recommendations, and then we'll see, I guess. I see, Myra, you've got your video on. Did you want to say something about that?
I mean, I think that, you know, that's kind of big strategic decision. I mean, I just want to say I'm Myra. I'm one half of Myra and Harriet. We've joined CDPS as the CEOs, and I really enjoyed the show and tell today. That was great. And hello to the colleagues at NRW that I've not really met yet. But, you know, we're really enjoying working with NRW. We see this as a great opportunity. We want to continue working with you very much. I think, you know, we'd like to expand our work with you. So I think there's some strategic conversations about which of your digital services you want to prioritise and you want to take forward, or whether you want to do more discoveries, or whether this is a particular area that you want to take forward at pace, and look at what you're delivering digitally and how you offer your permitting interactions. Usually the end of discovery gives you a kind of checkpoint moment, if you like, where we can come together and make a decision about how you want to invest your resources in the future in terms of your digital spend and activities. But you know, this is clearly not one where you're going to get to the end of discovery and say, gosh, well, we haven't really got a problem to address. It's all working really well and there's no challenge. So the strategic question will be about how much you want to invest in this service going forward, and how much work you want to do, and if you want to take it into the next stage of development, or, you know, there's lots of choices you can make. But you know, I just want to feedback that we've really enjoyed working with you. We are really enjoying working with you, and we see it as a great opportunity. And, you know, we'd be keen to expand our work with NRW and continue in that way over, you know, however long you want to continue to partner with us.
Thanks for that. A message from Catherine as well. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, thanks everyone, and thanks Myra for what you've just said. We're also really enjoying this and learning lots from the team, and you know, everyone involved is feeling the benefits. So yeah, we're really keen that we don't just get to the end of discovery and go, okay, see ya. this is about how we build into alpha and beyond, and strategically we're here to see this through to the end, not to let all the good work go away. So I think we're having a chat with Anne and the guys tomorrow. That'll be good.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to that. Thank you for that. I noticed also another question, another point from Louise. So thank you for that. Something we'll capture with some advice you've offered there around Adam's piece. So that's great. Right, we have run over here slightly, so sorry about that. If you do have any other questions, you've got Alex's email at the bottom here. So by all means, send something through to Alex. We'll get that and be able to respond to that next time we meet. Just seeing if there's a new question in that I could have missed. Great, good to, thank you for that. Yes, thank you. Positive messages coming in. So thanks all for that.
Say as well, if you do have questions, you can email. You can also tweet. You can tweet us. That's real working in the open.
Yeah, we're all about working in the open. No, thank you for that. Have a good rest of the Tuesday, and we will speak soon. All the best.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
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 Thank you.